Excellent. So thank you everybody for joining. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here real quick and let's kick this off. So, all right, here we are again back in week 3 of our coding boot camp. We're going to be covering web development foundations this week. We're going to get a little bit of an off day, so anybody that couldn't make it in today, fully understand it's Monday as opposed to our normal Tuesday because Thursday this week is a holiday. It's the 4th of July. But this week we're going to be doing the web development foundations, and we're going to be setting up our back-end framework. We're going to talk about back-end frameworks a little bit as a broad term and definition. We'll define what that is a little bit, but using specifically a framework called Django. So Django is written in Python, just like most frameworks are. And taking kind of a step back here, as way of definition, back-end is referring to anything that in a web application a user doesn't really interact with. So say when you go to a website and you fill out a form, the front end is the form, the back end is what happens to the information the user puts in after they hit submit. If some kind of calculation happens, if things go into the database, all that's the back end stuff. So frameworks as a concept are a set of commonly used tools that allow you to do back-end type things. So there are back-end frameworks and front-end frameworks. This week, we're talking about back-end frameworks, and we're going to start setting up our back-end framework, Django. But back-end concerns that are common are like logging in users, interactions with databases, things like, since it's a web application, interactions through HTTPS. Anybody off the top of your head, somebody's not returning from last time, know what HTTPS stands for?
It's hypertext. There's something link.
Close.
Secure.
That's what the S stands for. Yep. Hypertext Transfer Protocol. Yeah. Right. So if we think back to our time in the service, and anytime you use a radio, right, the protocol is the set of directions and instructions that includes all the frequencies you're going to use, the call signs that everybody's going to use, how everybody talks to each other. It includes things like radio etiquette, you, this is me, over, all that noise, right? That's what HTTP is. And a framework like Django is written in Python. So you could read it if you could read Python, but it's specifically set up to have the things that people always need when they're making a web app. So stuff to interface with HTTPS, things to make logins, all that kind of stuff is built in. And that's what frameworks do. So frameworks they're not a language themselves, but they are a compilation of things that are commonly used in a context, and they're written in a language. So Django is written in Python, and it's the framework that we're going to be using when we're setting it up today. And we're going to do more talking about this definition as we get our hands on with it. So does that generally make sense conceptually now? Any big questions about that before we move on?
Yes.
All right, go ahead and feel to shout them out if you want to. Real quick review things that we've done up to now. So we covered a lot, obviously, in the last 2 weeks. Starting out with how computers understand what we write in programming languages by reading files and directories. And so when I do these reviews, I'm not going to hit the exact same points each time. This is just sort of the same thing as previously on, and we talk about what happened in the last show. It's always the most relevant bits and pieces of what we're going to talk about today. So, reading the sequential control structure, reading top to bottom, left to right, files and directories, that's a pattern we're going to see over and over and over in all programs. And we're going to do a lot of it today, right? So that's one thing. And then when a computer executes our directions that we wrote down, or our algorithms, it's running an application and it's fulfilling a purpose for the user, right? So that's one of the things that we talked about. We talked about the syntax specifically of Python. So again, now we know we can read Python. So if Django is written in Python, we should be able to read and understand what's happening. Even if we don't know how to produce it, we should be able to follow and know what's going on. And we entered through things that again, Mike, we were talking about a little bit earlier, the entry points into our application. When we go to our main.py file, and we had that if name equals main idiom and the main entry point, we're going to see that in action and kind of a usage of that today with the backend framework. And then the other thing we talked about is algorithms for problem solving. Choices we make, that's what we wrapped up with and ended with last week, is when we make algorithms and write algorithms, we're making a choice and balancing between several concerns, and it's a set of trade-offs. And that kind of brings us up to here. That's what we're going to do today. is get set up with our foundation for the web application that we're going to build, and we're going to employ some of these concepts that we've been talking about. Before we switch gears into that, out of those things that we've reviewed or anything else we've gone over up to now, do we have any questions? Anything that we want to talk about? Anybody stuck somewhere that we want to talk about? And I want to reiterate for anybody that maybe didn't catch earlier, because I'm not sure if I was class started, if I was just talking to Steve before class started, but if you're working to catch up and you haven't, done all the things up to now, that's totally fine. Those things that we did for practice and exercise, absolutely do them. Go back and practice those things. But you can also treat now as sort of a blank slate to move forward. And the documentation that I sent out earlier today has directions for what we're going to build today. And I'm going to do that for each of the lessons going forward until we have our application built. And you could take those and copy and paste them into the things. And if you follow the directions, you should be able to build along fairly easily and fairly quickly. And if you haven't done absolutely everything up to now, don't really stress about it. Focus on like doing this stuff now and doing it moving forward, because this is going to have your complete application if you do all these steps moving forward. Cool. All right. So if no questions, let's crack on, and then ask questions along the way. Absolutely. This is always the case. So before we dive into get our hands on stuff, I want to go through a couple of quick slides. I mentioned some things at the end of class, I think last time at some point, talking about this book, The Timeless Way of Building, and how it's a great thing for design. We're not going to spend a lot of time designing our application. We're going to kind of skim over the design phase and jam it into just a handful of slides and dive right into just making something, which not the best practice, but we're trying to do this fairly quickly, and it's not a design class. I do want to get some concepts though, and The Timeless Way of Building has excellent resources for that. So once again, if you haven't, check it out in the free coding resources. It has what's called a, I forget what they call it. It's not condensed, but it's the table of contents basically, where it's broken down into just short paragraphs about what it is most important in that book. And one of the concepts is in there. It's not in the table of contents, but it's something I mentioned last time about what we're doing is we are working within a context. And anytime we're writing software, designing a system or a building of any kind, this guy again was he was talking about designing buildings, but in all things, he gave us a framework to say in a context, a system of forces will arise, and in that system of forces, there's going to be conflict, and it's our job to design a system and a configuration that allows those forces to resolve themselves. Right? So we're always in a context of some sort. There's going to be a system of forces that arise, and we're focused on the configuration that allows those forces to resolve themselves within the context. There are lots of ways to pattern this, and again, this is kind of one of the main things that he talks about. So it gets pretty deep, but as a sort of an example, we say the context is our full application, and in the context of that application, we have the conflict that we've seen a bunch of times already between human and machine readability. So one of the patterns that we follow, and we're going to follow several times as we make this, on trying to configure things to allow this to resolve itself, is called refactoring. So we rewrite our code and we choose algorithms and we choose data structures that are going to be easy for people to read and easy for the machine to read, balancing out somewhere in between there and allowing those conflicts to resolve. And that's, again, it's maybe not the best example, maybe not a complete example, but the idea here is that the top line here with the context, system of forces, and configuration is a framework for how to design any building task. It doesn't matter what it is you think about. It could be your whole application. It could be one piece of your application, like the login function or a form that somebody needs to submit, or the layout of the page, or whatever the case may be. Context, system of forces, and your configuration allowing them to resolve themselves. So the other really important concept that I want to keep in mind as we go forward with this, and it's going to go from something that hopefully I give you a useful visual to something that you're going to have to picture in your head as you're doing the work, is this idea of dividing a finite space. So in this abridged contents, table of contents in this book that I'm really encouraging you to check out and read, The Timeless Way of Building, point number 19, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it's talking about how when you're building, each individual building thing is differentiating space within itself, right? So it's not adding things on the outside. There is a whole that exists before the parts do. And what you're doing when you design the system, when you design your whole, in this guy's case, a building or a town, but in our case, software, there is a whole space that you're going to be splitting up and making into other parts. And to give you a little bit of a visual of that, I'm actually using this slide as that same sort of thing. I'm going to break this slide up into different parts and try to give you this understanding of what exactly I mean. So imagine this guy is talking about building an office building. So you have a plot of land. It's going to be this rectangle thing right here. Outside of this space is the city, the sidewalk, the roads, everything that's not within the plot of land that you can use to build and design. And so you have things like parking lots in there. And we all know parking lots look like they can look a lot of different things, but it's going to take up this space. You're going to have like a main building that's within this space still. And then within that main building, you're going to have things like a lobby. You're going to have offices in the background and stuff like that, right? So it's, again, it's further delineation. And within the lobby, you could have couches or, different areas for people to stand and wait or sit, or all kinds of further delineation as you break it down. Same sort of thing if we go into a web app. The concept of this dotted line might be a environment that you're working inside, a virtual environment, which we're going to talk about very soon. Whereas outside of this is the computer that you're in, the internet, all the connections that you have outside of the web application that you're building. You may have your storage that's in here. That's, it could be your database, cache, memory, any of those sorts of things. Again, it could be further broken down within this area of what that is. And that's somewhat separate from your main application, but it's in this general area of something considered part of your web app, right? And then since we're doing web, the lobby might be like a homepage where people come and you break that down into different sections of your homepage. And the back office stuff could be functions that people don't necessarily go into the back office in an office building. They don't necessarily see the functions. And so what's on this web app side says function, that's the back end stuff. Homepage would be like the front end stuff. But these little diagrams are to show the idea of the delineation of the inside space, not modularly adding things to the outside and building something like that. So does that make sense? And any questions on that? And don't steal these drawings because this stuff I'm going to sell these. These are top notch designs. It's proprietary information. All right, cool. So no questions on that.
Yeah.
Really want to just get these in there. Somebody have a question? No? Okay. All right, cool. So let's exit out of this and let's go over to Python Anywhere and get hands-on with our thing and start building our web app. And for anybody that's interested, I could share out the slides later. I know I haven't been doing that lately because there hasn't been anything on the slides, but those at least had some kind of visualization. So I'll do that with the rest of the stuff, with the recording and whatnot. All right. So for those of you that are following along, however you do it, whether it's later with the recording or right now in class, we're over in Python Anywhere, and we're just going to be on our dashboard, and we're going to get started with building a web app. So we've already done some stuff in the dashboard. We've looked at consoles, which we'll be in a little bit today, files, which also, but now we're going to go to the web tab and we're going to get started here. And the first thing that we're going to do is actually set up our web app through Python Anywhere. So we're going to click on web. And when you get to this page, you only have one free web app that you could do. So if you've already played around with this and made a web app, this will already be taken. But if you don't, if you haven't done anything, you have a add new web app button right here someplace. I think this is sort of stacked up because I've zoomed in. It might be side by side depending on the space you have on your screen. And again, remember I demoed the app that we built before and I just scrapped it out and threw it away entirely. So be comfortable doing that. Like make new apps and destroy them and practice these mechanics so you get used to doing it. But I'm going to click this add new app and it's going to give me a message about the domain name. And so all it's going to do is tell me that the domain name is going to be my username.pythonanywhere.com. Now, when they mean domain name, I think we all we know what that is, right? That's the top part up here. And if we look up at this domain name, the pythonanywhere.com, this is the HTTP that we were talking about, right? So this should look very familiar in the sense that it's the same structure as our Linux file structures, right? Same slashes. So like think of this as the root directory that we think of the top directory in our Linux thing is that slash, right? Root. That's what this is. That's what this domain name is. The domain is the root, the base part of it. And then everything after this is some other directory that's got files in it. So it's got some sort of file in this directory. So there's a user directory, there's my directory, and there's web apps and all these other things that could be in here. This is a like an HTML tag kind of thing. But so this is just telling us that your web app is going to be this, your username.pythonanywhere.com. Don't worry about that information. It's just letting you know. So we're going to scroll down to the bottom, hit next. All right, and then select a Python web framework. There's plenty of them, as you can see, and I mentioned we're going to do Django, but we're not going to click on that. Don't click Django for this one. We're going to do manual configuration on this step. And the reason that I want to do that is the steps that we take here are going to be similar to what you would do on your own computer if you want to do development outside of Python Anywhere. And again, another quick note, anybody that may be following along in like VS Code and doing these things locally, I really encourage you to do it in Python Anywhere because this will be deployed and live on the internet today. And that's what the settings we're making now is kind of doing that step so you don't have to do it later. And if you're doing this locally, you're going to have to, plug it into something that can serve it for you online. But this time we're not going to do Django because it's going to shortcut a lot of things. And I want to go through the manual configuration to get used to the mechanics and show you explicitly where everything is. So we're going to hit manual configuration and then select a Python version. So I was just choose the latest. This one has 3.10 is the latest. There is 3.12, I think, is the latest actual version of Python, but this is the latest version that's available on Python Anywhere. We will talk more about versions later in the course, but this is very important. This goes all the way back to 2.7. And again, keep in mind that the first number is the major release. So all these threes should work together with each other, more or less the same, but there might be differences, but they won't work with two, and it'll be written totally differently. So for our purposes, usually you're going to do 3.10, but if you have some reason to work on a project that has a specific version, this is where you would choose that.
Hey, Jeff.
Yeah.
How did you get there? I was down printing. I printed out what you sent today. I printed out those
So
documents.
it's just on web. You just click on web and then you do add new web app and you follow the prompts.
Web is on the is in the console.
Yep. It's up at the very top.
Dashboard.
Yeah, it's up on the top up here on its own tab. So it's like next to files and tasks.
Okay.
And then you do add new app.
Okay, over on the side.
Yep. Cool. And so then remember you get to manual configuration. So we're not choosing Django, we're doing manual configuration. And then we're going to do Python 3.10. And the last page is going to give us a little thing that says, hey, you're doing manual configuration. So you're going to have to do this WSGI file. As I pronounce it WSGI. I'm not sure if anyone else does, but I've always read it that way. I don't think I've ever heard anyone say it out loud. But this file is something that comes in, it's going to come in our project. We could configure it on our own, but it'll come configured on Python Anywhere and ready to use right away, which is nice. And then we have to set up some things like our virtual environment that it mentions here with virtual env. And I'll show you those steps. And again, there's a reason we want to do that explicitly because that's something that you're going to do with pretty much any Python project is use virtual environments and choosing your Python version.
So we're doing manual configuration.
Yep, manual configuration.
Okay.
Okay, Jeff, I clicked manual configuration and somehow that brought me back to what doesn't look anything like the one you got up there.
It doesn't have Python 3.10.
Yeah, click Python 3.10, right?
Yep.
Let me do it again.
Yeah. Start over. And then once you get to this point, when it says manual configuration, you hit next, it's going to spin up an app for you. So it's going to set up a handful of files in directories.
Okay.
And you'll be ready to go. So it'll take you once you've done that.
That's the one I got.
There you go. Yep, you were just ahead of me. So once you've done that, you should get a screen like this. And this is the now web tab of of your web app. So this is where you're going to do a lot of the backend configuration type stuff. Think of it as the place where you are hosting your application, because that's what it is. Python Anywhere is a hosting service. So these are all the configurations for hosting your code. We're going to write the code. It doesn't exist yet. We don't have any of it yet. But this is all the parts and pieces that we need to run the application on the internet. So quick orientation on this page. We're going to be here a lot. We're going to do things through here. But here's a link to our web page. So it should be a blue hyperlink thing. And we can actually check it out now if we wanted to. So I'm going to open this in a new tab. I'm just going to right click and open in a new tab. And when we get up here, it should just say hello world. Like we remember when we wrote our hello world app, that's so common. That's what everybody does. And it says, this is the default welcome page for Python Anywhere, host a web application here. I can zoom in since this is all tiny. And then you find out more configuration and it gives you some links to some places. So this works. I have an app. Not much to look at, but you can see here's the web address where it exists. It's what they told me it would be. And there's no slashes or anything because we haven't made any other pages or done anything with it.
So you just click on the configuration link?
You just click on the configuration for, and then there's a hyperlink, and you click on that should be your username.pythonanywhere.com.
Yeah.
You should see a hello world thing running.
Okay, got that.
So right below that, there's a big reload button. We're going to press that pretty much anytime we make a change. What this does is reloads the source code or configuration on the server. So the server is just a computer someplace. Python Anywhere has their servers in the East Coast, in Amazon Web Services servers, East US East 1 or something like that. You could look up exactly where that is and go to the building if you really wanted to. But this button is just saying, hey, save and refresh all that information that's on the server. And so anytime we make any changes in our files locally or on the browser or any of those sorts of things, we're going to press this button before we go back to our page. Because it's a free instance, it's going to run for 3 months and it'll just die at the end of that and it'll be on, inactive. So if you want to keep it longer than that, you come back and run it, or you could pay them. We don't need to do the paid version. The free is going to be good. Some analytics, we're not going to worry about that. Code, we're going to be down here later. This is where your code's going to be. So when we start writing our source code, we don't have it yet, but we're going to put that in here. Some stuff, same thing with virtual environments. Log files, this is very important. When you're working in here, you're going to be coming to these a lot when things break. Specifically, the middle one, this error.log. So it's going to be the domain name, so your username.pythonanywhere.com, and then .error log. And that's going to be usually the one you want when something goes wrong. Almost.
Where are you at now, Jeff? I'm still on Hello World.
Yep. So just go back to your web tab on Python Anywhere. Go back to the tab where it just says web and click on web, and you should see this whole screen. And I'm just scrolling down on the configurations to show you what's here.
Okay.
And then we'll break some stuff later, and there's other ways to get to the log file, but this is always here, and you can always get to it this way. So you just scroll down the page, you should see log files. The error log is the best one.
Got it.
And then static files we're not going to talk about today. It's something we'll set up later next week probably. When we start talking about front end. There's some things in the security tab that are definitely worth noting. You can force HTTPS, which is a good thing to do. I don't know any reason not to do it. I usually come down here and just click that to enabled. It is a choice. You don't have to do it, but I think it's worth it. There's no harm in doing it. It makes your site just a little bit more secure. And then you could password protect your site while you're developing it. So I don't do this because it's kind of a pain to come to your site and be able to log in each time. But if you're developing a web app and you want to protect it from, people coming and messing around with it, or, bots coming and overwhelming your database while you're developing and stuff like that, which they will do, then this is a decent idea to do. You can put in a username and password. These will be stored in plain text here, just so you know. I'm not going to do it now, but it's up to you if you'd like to. And then I mentioned at the very bottom here, you could disable a web app so it's just not working and then make space to make another one if you wanted to, or you could just delete it entirely. And don't be afraid to do that. You could get back to this point fairly easily, just clicking through the web app thing. So that's a quick orientation of all the things that we have. Anybody have questions up to now? Anybody following along with me?
I am following along with you.
Excellent.
Yeah.
All right. So what we're going to do, the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to go over to our console and we're going to start setting up our virtual environments and our Django's and all those sorts of things. So I want to tell you a little bit about what virtual environments are and set one up. So let's go over to consoles. And I'm going to open this in a new tab just so that I have all the different working places that I could be open. So this is just a bash console that we've used before. We'll only need one, so it should be fine to use what we got. I'll zoom in just a little bit. Let me know if I need to do more. All right. So again, as a refresher, I've destroyed everything that was in here. So
wait a minute, let me catch up.
All right, catch up. So I'm just showing where we are real quick, so you should have plenty of time to catch up. We're just in a bash console, and I'm showing what we have in our home directory is just README classes and our main.py files. That's it. So I got rid of the web application. We're going to start building that now together. So in our bash console, we have our UTC time or tilde showing us where our home directory. And what we're going to do is make a virtual environment. A virtual environment is a place to store what's called packages. And packages are these things in Python that serve a specific purpose. They do something. They let you interact with an operating system, for example, or handle CSV files or do certain specific functions. Again, they are Python code written someplace that we could just access. So much like when if you remember in our main.py file, we imported things from classes, same sort of thing. We can import packages from other people that have made them, and it makes developing way, way, way easier. So there's not the framework yet. This is packages generally. It's something that Python really operates under. So the tool that we use.
Jeff, I want to make sure I didn't go too far ahead.
Sure.
I saw your day 5, the Django project set up Python Anywhere. Yep. I followed all those instructions. I'm down to, I've installed the Django. Is that the right place? Is that where you're going?
Yeah, we're going to get, that's where we're going to be at the end of today. Absolutely. So you should, if you've already done off the documentation, thanks for asking. if you already done all this author documentation, you should have a little rocket ship flying on your homepage instead of the hello world. Did you get to that point already? No.
I've set up down to the virtual environment, or
Okay.
excuse me,
Okay.
down to the Django project, but I
Okay.
haven't done any of the settings afterwards.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. All right.
Yeah.
Great. So, excellent. All right, man. So that's good to hear. All right. Anybody else has followed along too? That's awesome. We have those directions if you wanted to use them and look at them. These are the steps. So we've gone through creating the little first kind of block of text in those directions, and now we're doing the first sorts of commands that we're going to be doing. And I think I'm following the same order. I don't have those same directions in front of me, but I'm should be following the same order roughly. But right now we're doing the virtual environment that we're going to create. Right. So,
So now is that the one, the 15 pages, Jeff, that you referred
yeah, it's really
to?
long. It's really long. It's a lot of steps, but it's also got full file examples that you can copy and paste in if you like get stuck someplace. So, all right. So the first thing for a virtual environment, we're going to use Python 3 the way we have before. So Python 3 space, we're not going to hit enter yet. And then we're going to add a flag that's -m. And that means module. It's short for module. It means we're going to use a Python module that's built into Python to do something. And this module is called venv. That's short for virtual environment. So the syntax here is Python 3 space -m space venv, and then the name of your virtual environment. And this, again, could be anything you like. You call it whatever you want to. I'm going to call it venv again, just so we get in the habit of when we turn it on and we use it every day, we get in the habit of remembering that's what this thing is called. But you would call it whatever you want. And it's good to be descriptive, tied to a project maybe, make it something you can remember. A quick side note before I do that, you're going to see a number of things today and throughout that are kind of redundant in the naming conventions. If that gets confusing, ask about it. I'll try to highlight when it's really important that you follow those naming conventions and when it's a matter of choice. And some of the things that I do are absolute best practices. I'll try to highlight those when I can. Some of them are my own personal choice. I'll try to highlight those when I can. But naming conventions, again, you'll see some redundancy here. And if you're confused as to why it's redundant, raise your hand and ask. This one is one you can name whatever you like. I'm doing it so that when we use it later, it's redundant. Okay, so I'm gonna make this virtual environment. What it's going to do is it's going to take a little bit. It's going to create a directory that has all the stuff that this module virtual environment has. And what it's going to go ahead.
So this venv,
Yeah.
venv, that's your name, the second venv.
Yep, the second one, the second V.
So now that's where I can give it another name if I want to do so.
Yep, sure can.
Okay.
You can call it whatever you like, and yeah, sometimes you'll do like a shorthand of the project you're working on, and something with env is really common. We're going to use that short acronym for environment a lot. And so while that gets rolling, what we're going to do is look at our, I guess we just give that a second. So this might take a second to install. So I'm going to go over, actually, let's go back over to our WSGI file. And I want to show something that's in there before we get too deep into it. So I'm going to go down. So I'm scrolling down back on the web tab, and I'm scrolling down to the code section. Right. So it says, what is your site running? And the third option here, you see this thing says var/www/ your username _python anywhere _com _wsgi.py. Everyone should have one of those. It's a built-in file. And there's something that was mentioned in that warning that said you're going to have your own WSGI file to mess with. So I'm going to open this up in a new tab, and I'm going to show you this because we are going to change some things in here, but I want to show you what's there now while we're waiting for our VM to go.
So the VM, I just push that and let it start running?
Yeah, it'll finish up in a second. I just want to do something while it's doing that. And I want to show you what's in this WSGI file because we're going to make some changes to it, but I want to show you what's in there now. So we ran our hello world.
How do you open this up again?
On the web tab.
Yeah, I'm looking on code. I'm looking on the code.
Just click this link, the var www username Python anywhere.
Okay.
Just click on it and pop it right open.
Oh, there it is. Okay, thanks.
And then hello world down here. If you scroll down to like line, it should be row 13 since we haven't made any changes yet. And here's the actual application. So you'll notice this is just a variable. It's all caps to show that it's a constant, but there aren't any real constants in Python. It's just for humans. Again, this human readability so that we know it doesn't change. And then here's a string. It's a triple string with HTML in it. We'll talk about HTML next week, so don't worry about that. But that's just the stuff that's in the internet to show where things should be laid out on the page. So here's the thing that actually said hello world and all the stuff that it had with the links and whatnot. And here's some familiar Python. We don't need to break down what it's doing, but this is all the web stuff, right? So this is checking to see the environment. It's getting status codes, 200 is what we're looking for. 404 should be fairly familiar. There's a bunch of different numbers. Doesn't really matter what those are, but this is something that if you wanted to come in here and read it, this is what it's doing. And this is all.
How did you get to that, Jeff?
This is in the web tab, and you scroll down to code, and then you click on the var www, your username, Python anywhere, WSGI, WSGI Py file, and that's what this is. And we're got to be able to find this because we're going to be making changes to it soon. So everyone make sure that you've got this file, you know where it is, and you know how to get to it.
Okay, hello world, yeah.
All right, cool. So once we got that open and we could go back over to our console, and the virtual environment should be done loading now. We know that by looking at our thing, and we have our $ back. We got control back of our console. And if we list what's there, we now have a VM or whatever you named it directory. So this should be the name. The second thing that you entered should be the name of your directory. All right. So what I'm going to show you is why we do this, why we do a virtual environment. And before I do anything else with it, I'm going to use what we're going to use to install our packages is something called pip, P-I-P. And then it's a recursive name. That means the first part of it is pip. And then the I is install packages. It's the syntax that you use to install packages. So what this does is it takes Python packages from the internet and brings them into your environment, and you use them. So what you could do to see what you have in your environment is you just type the word list. So all this is lowercase pip space list, and it should show you everything that's available to you as a pip package. And if you do this in your home directory, it's going to be just like mine, this huge list of all kinds of stuff, right? You see this gigantic list? Now, these are all different Python packages, meaning it's code written somewhere, and these are all version numbers on the right. So you got, versions 2 and 3. Now, the idea with a virtual environment is what we're going to do is think about that delineating space inside of something. We've delineated a special set of space where we are not going to have access to any of these packages, so that we can explicitly put in just the packages we need for our own project, so that we can say, use one of these packages, like, I don't know, Torch. Let's say we wanted to use Torch, but we want to use a different version of Torch. We want to use version 2. I don't know what Torch is. I don't know if there is a version 2. I'm just using this as an example. If in our project we want to do that, having Torch version 1 in our environment will break our project if it needs Torch version 2. So that's why we do virtual environments, is to have project-specific packages available. So what I'm going to do, that was an example of the list of all the packages there. So I'm not in my virtual environment yet. We have made it. So here's our directory, just to refresh your memory. And now what we have to do is activate that virtual environment. So the first step before you get working is you've made your virtual environment. You should only have to do that once at the very beginning of a project, but then every day you get started working, make sure you've activated it so you're working inside your virtual environment. And the way we do that is a command called source, just S-O-U-R-C-E. Michael, you got a question? What's up?
Yeah, okay. I typed in pip in my console, right?
Yep.
I got this big list of commands,
and
I don't see how to get back to where you are.
Oh yeah, it's it probably, you might have to hit Q, because it probably gave you the if you just hit pip by itself, it just said, hey, what do you want me to do with that? And it gives you a whole like manual and says, hey, hit this for for help and stuff like that. Yeah. If you're stuck and it's nothing, like try hitting clear. It should just give you it should just give you control back. But if it didn't, hit Control C to stop the process. Hit clear to see,
okay, there it is.
Works. There you go. Cool.
Thank you.
Yep, no problem. So to activate your virtual environment, you type in source, S-O-U-R-C-E, all lowercase. And this isn't just for virtual environments. This is you could refresh your entire terminal doing this, but we're going to then say the name of the virtual environment that you did. So whatever that name was, and I'm using tab complete again to make sure I know I'm in the right place and it does exist, because you can put these virtual environments really anywhere you wanted to. I just put in the home directory for expedience. There is a virtual environments like directory that you could put it in. Doesn't really matter. We're putting it here. So we say source, name of your virtual environment. It's going to have this, no spaces. You're going to type in bin, B-I-N. So just hit B, then tab complete, and then activate. So A, hit tab to complete. So this is the syntax: source space name of your virtual environment /bin/activate. And when I hit enter, it will activate my virtual environment. We could tell because over on the left-hand side, we got parentheses with the name of our environment inside of the parentheses before the control for our command. And now we can also tell that we have a new virtual environment that's separate from that other environment because we can do the same thing we did before. We do pip list to see what packages are available in our environment. And there should be very few because we just opened this up. And as you see, there's basically nothing. There's two things. Instead of that gigantic list of stuff, we have pip itself, and we have this thing called setup tools, which we definitely do want to have. But those are the basic parts that come with a brand new virtual environment. So what we have is a clean slate to put packages into and do what we need to do in our project and our project only. And the purpose of this is to avoid conflict with other packages. Like I said, these versions become important with as your projects grow and you do more things, you're going to get more and more packages in here. You got a question, Steve? If you do, you're on mute, man. Still on mute.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't see pip in setup tools in mine.
When you do pip list, did you activate the virtual environment?
Okay, I got the list of let me see what's way up here. It's kind of mind blowing right now. Let's see.
It's a lot of stuff, right?
Yeah. So I did the pip list.
Yep.
Pip list, and then it came down package, and I got all these pip
Tons of
lists
stuff, right? Yep.
and all these files and whatever.
Yep. So it's
And
you
then-
got to activate the virtual environment to make sure you have in parentheses the VM name over here. So the source bin activate. Source name of your virtual environment /bin/activate. Make sure you do that step.
Okay, I did that.
That's
Source
fire.
I named mine W build for like web build.
Okay,
I just
cool.
did W build
Mhm.
/bin/activate.
Yep.
And I did that, and so now I got my few files in there. I got the README.
So the files won't
right?
change. So that's I want to be really clear. The files, if you do ls, there'll be
Yeah.
no difference.
Okay.
So like no difference at all. This thing doesn't have anything to do with the files that are here. And these
Okay.
packages are not files that are here. So to see these packages, you have to type in pip list again,
Pip list. Okay.
activated. And that's separate from ls. ls is still just going to be your files and directories.
Got it. Okay.
Good question though. Again, so
Oh yeah. Okay. I got those. I put in pip
Cool.
list. It came
Yeah.
back. Yeah. Got
Cool.
that.
And that's it's really important to understand sort of what's happening here because again, this is a directory, but the environment we're in is not a directory. We're still in the same directory. We're in our home directory.
Wow.
And even if we move to other directories from here, we'll be in our virtual environment until we do what's called deactivate. That's how you exit a virtual environment. So I'm going to do that just to show you there I've exited. And now, if I did pip list, I'm not, well, I'll do it again because who cares? It'll just take a second. Now, if I do pip list again, it's going to be this huge, again, gigantic list of things. Get that out of here. And I'll once again do source, name of it, bin, activate to get back into my virtual environment and see that I only have the two packages that we need. So, there's really important things to do: source, name of your environment, bin, activate, and deactivate to get in and out of virtual environments. And virtual environments exist as a space in your computer that can hold packages, make sure they don't conflict with other packages, but they are not directories. You can move within directories. We're going to do that here in a second.
Okay.
Cool. All right. So
just to melt your brain.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
right there.
Just to make it
This is
true.
that fire hose I was telling you guys
Yeah.
about. This is
Yeah.
that fire hose. Drink away.
All my little guys are running into each other up there,
Good, man. That's what it takes. A couple of times of that, and it'll all fall together at one point. So, all right. So what we're going to do now is we're going to install another package. And now we have our environment. So we're going to install the most important package that we're going to use is the Django package itself. And if you followed along with the directions, there's another package in there. We're going to skip that now because I want to actually kind of run into the error of not having the right stuff in there and show you what it looks like. So for right now, we're just going to install one package, but you can install multiple at once if you wanted to. We're going to do pip install. So pip space install with no caps, all lowercase. And then we're going to do the name of the package that we want to install. In this case, it's Django with a capital D. Most things have been lowercase. This time it's going to be capital. So DJANGO. And when I hit enter, this might take a while. This might take a bit, even though I have a cache version, it might take a few minutes. So while this happens, we're going to go back over to our WSGI file that I kept open from before. But if you don't remember how to get there, on the web tab, scroll down to your code section, click on this var www, your username, Python anywhere, wsgi.py file. And inside of that, we're going to make some changes now. So get this open. Stick with me here. So on line 19, in our Hello World applications, the code actually starts to refresh your memory. Anything that starts with these hashtags is a comment. So when the computer comes in here, it skips these lines and says, okay, don't read that, move on. So what we're going to do is we're going to comment. It's called commenting out all of these lines of code. So we're going to highlight this entire WSGI application from rows 19 to 47, highlight the whole thing. I'm going to hold down my control key. I'm going to hit slash. It's going to comment all that stuff out. So now we have no application set up.
From 19 to 47?
Yep. All the code. So all of your code on this page should now be commented out because there are other pieces in here that come commented out, and now it should be pretty much the whole thing. Should be all.
Tell me again what controls to push when I get it highlighted.
Highlight, hit control, hold out control, and then the slash. And it toggles between
the forward slash, right?
Yep, forward slash. So it toggles between
it works. Okay.
Commenting and uncommenting. So we're going to comment all those rows 19 to 47.
Okay. I tried this the other day and it wiped out everything I had. So
nice. That's always fun.
So
yeah, I love it.
So the other one is going to be pip install Django.
Yep, that's the second one. Yep, and then now and we're still in the WSGI files. We commented out everything in the pure WSGI application. Now we have to scroll down to row 74. Should be row 74. We haven't added anything to this, so it should be about the same in yours. And we're going to uncomment the Django application. So that's down to row 89. So all the stuff between the import statement on row 76 to this application variable statement. The application is get underscore WSGI application method being called. So same thing, we're gonna highlight all those rows, hit control / and it'll remove all the comments where it's relevant. There'll still be a couple of comments here, but this is just Python code. So this should look very familiar, even if you don't know exactly what's happening here. So we've got a couple of import statements here at the top. There's a path variable that says our username or your username, and then it has this example that says my site, right? We don't have this directory yet, but this is the directory that they're showing as an example. And it has in here, it says, this is assuming that you have a file at your home directory, my site, and then you see my site again, then settings. We don't have this yet. I'm just showing you what it's expecting. And here's my site manage.py, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to go make these directories now and put our code in there. But this is just telling us what it's expecting to see, kind of where it's expecting to see it. There's some other things happening here that if you're really interested, you can come back and read, but we're not going to get too deep into it today. We just need to uncomment this to make sure our Python code runs through Django the way it's supposed to. But all these, again, these are all familiar things. We got variables, we got control structures, if we have more imports and from and stuff like that. So read this at some point. But once we've done that,
what we just did, so excuse me. So the control forward key will comment everything, and at the same time, or and then also those same two key combinations will uncomment everything.
Yep, it toggles between. So whatever it is now, it'll just switch it to the other. So I'll just go back and forth. Yep.
Got it. Okay.
And then, so we're going to save this with the uncommented Django section. So I'm going to save that. And now it should be ready to roll whenever we have our package installed. We'll flip back over here, and now it is. So we know we can tell because we have our control back. And I'll clear this up, and we'll do pip list again just to see what's in there, because it as you can see, installs some other stuff. So there's this SQL parse and typing extensions and this ASCII ref thing. Those are dependent packages that Django needs. So there's another reason why you do things in virtual environments, because maybe the one package you needs like 5 other packages, and those packages all have their versions. And if you happen to have like SQL parse version, 4 or something like that, whatever, it could break things. So you want to make sure, again, always use a virtual environment. All right, so now we got Django in there. What we are going to do is, and we've updated our WSGI file as well.
Okay, let me ask one thing while we're here. Okay.
Yeah, let's do that.
So when you're looking at the prompt again, when it says VNV.
Yep.
And okay, I got it.
You good?
Yeah, we're good.
All right, cool. All right, so now we are going to start our Django project. We're going to create those directories with the files in them that the WSGI file said that it was expecting. And this is a really standard way to start. This is going to be the same no matter what environment you're working in. We're going to do that same idiom that we had Python 3-M to call a module. And this time we're going to be using the Django module. So I'm going to say Django, this time lowercase, right? We're referencing it now. We have it installed in our environment so we can reference it and use it. And we're going to do start project, all one word, no space, no caps, Python 3 space -M space Django space start project. And then we're going to give it a name. So for this example, I'm going to name it my site. And I highly, highly, highly recommend you also name it my site. That will make it way simpler for you. Don't get creative at this point and start coming up with fancy names. Just for this example,
Keep it
call it my
simple.
site.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Because this will by default match. If you remember the settings we had on our WSGI file, and if we call it this now, we don't have to change anything else. If you call it something else, you got to go back to the WSGI file and change all the references that say my site to something else, right? So I'm telling you that now. It's on you if you do that. If you decide to call it something else, we are calling it my site. It will be called my site through the course. I will reference it as my site. It'll be easier if you do the same. All right. So, but I can't make you. This
You
is
got
America.
an extra weekend or so that you really
Yeah.
don't need. You really, really,
Yeah, you really
just
want to
feel
beat your
like
head
doing
against the
this again.
wall. Yeah, feel free to name it something else, but trust me, my site's better. All right, so I'm going to enter on this, and it's going to start our project, give us control back. It doesn't give us any confirmation or do anything special or anything like that, but we know that it happened because if we list what's there, we now have a directory called my site. And so we can change directories into that. So CD my site. And then if you did this on the documentation, I use this little double ampersand thing to put both these CD and the creation of the project together. You could do that with these things, just run both commands at once and just move into the directory. We did them separately just to be explicit. But now, if I print working directory, you see that we're in our home username my site directory. And that, if you recall, is where our WSGI file expects to see a manage.py file. So let's see if we have one. Let's
Can
do
we go back over this step again? We had CD my site.
Yep.
How are you? Oh, I see. Wait a minute. Okay. I click CD my site, and then my site comes up, right?
Mhm.
With the how did it get the? Oh, I see. When you change directories, you change the entry point for your next.
Yeah, this thing right here now says it's the ~/ my site. So this says where we are now on top of, it's like the last directory that we're in. So the control changes a little bit. It says where we are. And now when we list here, let me clear this up because it's getting a little messed up. Now when I list what's in this directory that I'm in, we have our manage.py file. And we also have another my site directory. So this is why it's important, again, well, there are reasons that this is called the same thing as the project directory. So this is the project directory, the one that we're in, the working directory that has our manage.py file. It also has a my site subdirectory with the same name. The reason for that is if we list what's in that, we're going to have all these files inside of it. So we're going to have this double score init double score.py file. This is a real standard thing to make Python files run as modules. There's nothing in this one. We're not going to get into it. We're also going to kind of skip the ASGI and the WSGI. Those are for asynchronous tasks and web stuff that we just looked at. Today, we're going to do some stuff in our settings.py. This is what comes standard with all Django projects. And the reason that these are named the way they are is so that everybody that comes to your project knows where to find this file. As we make more applications and this project gets bigger, we're going to make a to-do list application later, and it's going to sit alongside this inner my site directory. So it's going to be right next to where we are now in the big level, the top level my site directory. It's going to be our to-do list. And then next to that directory is this other my site directory that has our settings.py. And we're not going to add anything to this internal my site directory. It's going to have settings, it's going to have URLs, and we're going to deal with these two files, but that's about it. Question. You got a question?
Sure. I'm trying to make sure I have this command correct. So it's
Sure.
Python 3 space -M space the Django with the lowercase d
Yep.
space start space project.
Nope. Start project is one word, no space in between.
One
those. So
word,
start
okay.
project, all one word. Then space, name of your project.
Okay.
And in our case, my site.
Oh, shit.
Cool. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to edit some of the things in the settings file and update some stuff that are Some of it is required to get things running that you have to do. Some of it is just optional best practice, and I really encourage you to do it. There are a couple of ways to do it. You can access these things through the GUI by opening your files and going into them this way, right? So our my site directory here. Here's our manage.py file. And if you want to open this up and have a look at it, we can. This, again, is something we read. We're not going to do anything in the manage.py, but this is very familiar to us, right? We have a definition of a main function. We have that main function called inside of our entry point idiom. And we're going to be using this. Again, you could read this again sometime that you like and see what it's doing. But this should be familiar to you. This is all Python. This is what it does. So this is our manage.py file. We're going to reference this and use it a lot, but not write anything in it.
It's got a little red error over on the border, the left border.
Yeah, it's a little syntax error. I don't know, that popped up in there when I looked at it before, and I'm not going to change anything because that comes standard. So
Okay.
I'm going to leave it alone when it says on the syntax error. I noticed that same thing. I think that's funny. But so, okay, so again, we're inside of our my site directory. So our username, home username is the project folder that was made. So we're alongside our manage.py, same directory as that. Their inner my site directory. Go down into that. Here are those files we're looking at. We're going to open up our settings.py by just clicking on it. Now, we could do this in V, and the directions inside the documentation that I shared said to do it in Vim and stuff like that. And you could. I like doing it that way too. But this, I think, is a little easier for folks to follow. So I'm going to do it here for the most part. We'll flip over to do Vim in a little bit. This is the thing that comes standard in our settings in our project. All Django projects have this file, and they all start the same way.
Okay, so I'm in files here.
Yep.
And I want to go to
my site and then my site. So it's 2 levels down into my site. So you do my site, then my site again, and you should see settings.py as a choice.
My site, and then
my site.
Yep.
My site.
Settings.py. All right. So then once you're inside the settings.py, there's a lot of stuff in here, and we're not going to go through each and every piece of this. I encourage you to read it. You end up changing much of this as you go. We're going to go through just a few of the top things. But again, this is all written in Python. So this is all stuff that you should be able to read and understand at least, even if you don't make any changes to it or you don't really do anything with it. You should be able to read what's happening and understand what are, the parts and pieces and generally what's happening. What we're going to do to get things going and sort of best practices is we're going to start at the top and make some changes basically in the first sort of 30-ish lines of code. So the first thing that we're going to do is sort of a best practice to hide some of the information that might be sensitive that you don't want to save into places like a version control system, which we'll talk about later, things like Git, GitHub. But things like a secret key down here on line 23, these are the kind of things you don't want to save into a public repository of something. You want to keep these sorts of things hidden. Now, this is an insecure one, so it doesn't really matter. You can keep this one for development purposes. But I want to show you the way of doing this because it's a really good habit to get into, and it's something you should just do at the beginning of every project and have done and have ready to go. So what we're going to do is we're going to move this out to someplace else. It's going to take a few lines of code to do it, but all these patterns are ones that we did in the last couple of weeks. So it should be very familiar. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to import some stuff from a package. So we're going to say from at the very top, up next to this other import statement. And we're going to say environ, which is an environment package that allows us to get things out of the environment that we're in. And we're going to say import the way we have before, the same syntax. And then we're just going to import, should be familiar, a class, capital ENV. Now down here, closer to our secret key, I'm going to do use of that environment class. I'm going to do lowercase env just for following conventions because we're referring to our environment variable. And then we're going to instantiate our class the way we have before. So capital ENV, open parentheses, close parentheses. And then a line down from that, we can now use that the way we have in the past. We have an instance of our class, so we could use the methods that are built into it. And in these environment classes that they have built in, you can use something called read_env as a method. That's going to read the environment and take files out of it and take stuff out of those files. So it expects a keyword argument of an env_file is, and then we're going to tell it the path to the file name. So for our case, it's my site. So the name of the directory where our settings.py file is. So it's the same name as the top level, but it's not the top level. It's where the settings.py file is. And we're going to say .env because it's going to be a hidden file. And that's the convention for naming it. is .env. So again, env is used a whole bunch of times. It's fairly redundant. We pass that as a string. And this is going to read in and access an env file that we're going to make here in a second. And then now that we have that, we can further reference that thing and take the values out of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight this whole secret key, and I'm just going to hit Control X to cut it. So I have it in my clipboard, but I'm not using it here. And I'm going to change this reference. The secret key is, so it's referencing something else, and it's going to say that environment variable, or not variable, sorry, the instance that we made of the env class, we're going to call it now that we've read our file in. And we're going to tell it to take a Django secret key as a string, and I put it in as all caps, again, showing that it's a constant. Actually a variable for Python's concerns, but human readable is a constant. All right, so once we've done that, we also need to make another quick change to down here on line 33, where it says allowed hosts, this constant, there's an open list with nothing in it. When you're developing locally, a lot of times you might just put in an asterisk to accept all hosts, but we don't really want to do that because that's way unsecure. So what we want to do is we want to put in our domain name, basically. So that's going to be your username underscore, I'm sorry, your username dot pythonanywhere.com. You can just copy this from your web tab if you wanted to. Or you can write it by hand. It doesn't matter. But the point is no HTTP, no www, nothing in front of it. Just your username dot pythonanywhere.com as a string inside of this list. And that's the only thing that you need in the allowed hosts constant. We're going to save this. I also want to highlight here that this on row 31, we're going to leave it the way it is, but its debug is set to true. That's going to give us a lot more information about stuff once we have it up and going, right?
Slow down for just a second so I can copy this.
Nope.
Okay.
We're going faster now. No, I'm joking. Yeah, sure. Anybody else? Anybody else got a question?
Yeah,
Are we stuck somewhere?
Yeah, I'm lost. I mean, you left me a
So
long
lost?
time ago.
Uh-oh. Where you lost?
Well, I'm back here from line 14.
Okay.
I'm on line 14. Just put the from env.
Import the class, the env class.
Okay, hold on a second. Import
Okay.
import DMV class.
ENV, capital ENV.
ENV.
Yep. And that's a class called ENV.
Space class.
Nope. It just is a class. It's capitalized, so just capital ENV, just the 3 letters.
Okay.
Okay. Could I,
And then
ENV.
a little bit closer down, somewhere down around row 24, 25, something like that is when I started using it. And we did the instantiation of the class into a variable called also env. Again, you call this whatever you wanted to.
Okay.
But it's just keep in mind that it is our environment thing.
So it's got to be in caps.
For when you instantiate it, yes. The instance of the class when you call it needs to be in capital.
ENV. Okay.
okay. Could we look at the line 30 allowed hosts with the brackets again?
Sure. That should just be as a string, your username.pythonanywhere.com.
Okay.
In the allowed
Let
hosts.
me work on that.
All right. So the last thing, once you get these things in there, and these are really the big, bits and pieces that need to be updated. I'm going to zoom out. So maybe we can see. No, we can't. Okay. That's all right. The last thing that we need to do is we cut the secret key. So we need to go make that env file. There's a couple of ways to do it. We could do it either in the console or in the GUI. I think I'm going to do it through the GUI just to make sure we don't lose anybody. So again, we'll go back to our files. I'm going to just open this up. I'm going to save this. Let's save our settings because this we should be done with this now. But we're going to go over and make our environment, our .env file. So I've saved this. Go to files.
Last thing we did there was allowed hosts. That was the last thing, right?
Yep. Allowed hosts. Should be the last thing. You should put your username, pythonanywhere.com as a string is the last step. All right. So now we're back in our file directory.
We're looking at, I'm still looking at number 30. At Mike at Python Anywhere. I want dot something, right?
.com. Yep. pythonanywhere.com. So your
okay.
username.pythonanywhere.com as a string.
And close the string. Okay.
All right.
Now,
Now, back in our file directory, once you save that, once you've added that, the last thing you need to do is update that allowed host to username.pythonanywhere.com. Go back to your files, file directory here in Python Anywhere files. Or you could do it in console and Vim, but again, I don't want to lose y'all in doing it in Vim, so we're just going to do it in files. So we're down to this thing where you can make a new file, and we're going to type in .env. Make sure you have a leading dot, leading period, env. And this is going to be our environment file, the env file, right? So I'm going to say new file, and it should take me straight there. So look at the very top. It says home, hiredlabs.env. And I'm going to now set, this is a plain text file. This is nothing special. I'm just going to set our Django secret underscore key is equal to, or I'm sorry. Oh, I copied the other one. So it just needs to be a string of some long random characters. Doesn't really matter. You can fill in whatever for this, and especially since it's development, it makes no difference. The idea is that we just need some set of long alphanumeric special characters sorts of things. There are a whole bunch of cryptologic ways that you want to make this secure. We're not going to worry about that now, especially this is development, no big deal. The idea is that it's going to need this secret key, and I call it Django. It could just be called secret key. You call it whatever you like, really. But this env file might have a lot of other variables, and it might have other secret keys for other things. So we're going to save that. So we saved our .env file. So the last thing we got to do before any of this works or operates the way we're supposed to operate it is we need to go and tell Python Anywhere where our source code is. So we need to go back to our web tab on Python Anywhere. So if you're up here at the top, you click web. If you close this tab already, I kept it open. We're just on the web tab here.
Okay, so we're gonna save the env file where it says secret key and all that.
Yep, just save this, save it. Make sure you save it before you leave, and then we can close this out if you want to, because we're done with this now. We've put in our secret key. If you put in a Django secret key and you updated your settings to reference this, we don't have to have it open anymore. We can go ahead and close it and just be back on our web tab. And what we're going to do is scroll down to this code section again. And this big red part where it says enter the path to web app source code is we need to give it a path, or else it's not going to be able to access any of our code. So if you remember, we just put our web app into our home directory in my site. That's the thing that we want to do. So I'm going to click this other one, the working directory one down there, and just copy this directory so I don't have to type it again. And paste it up here to the directory, and then just type my site. Whoop, not yelling, not caps. Sorry, my site.
This is the one.
So under code, you're on web tab, go to code, and the very top one, it's going to say enter path, to your source code. And you want that to be /home/username/mysite/. And that's your code base is in there.
Okay, so just copy it in there, right?
Just copy it in there. Okay. Well, I mean, just write this in there however you want to, just /home/username/mysite. And then you'll have that directory. Then you just scroll down to virtual env section. And when you do the same thing, we need to tell Python Anywhere where our virtual env is. And if you remember, it's also in our home directory. We just put it there. We could have put it anywhere. But that's where we put it. So I'm just gonna put our home directory, but then we called it, in my case, I called it venv to remind us that that's the name of the package we use to install it. But you could call it, like Steve mentioned, he called it something else. You call that whatever you want to. That's totally fine. I'm going to keep it as venv just to remind everyone as we use it. That's the name of the package that Python uses to run this. And now that we've told Python Anywhere, it should have our virtual environment, should have our source code. We could update this working directory to my site as well. I don't really have to, but we can. We have our WSGI files.
I'm having trouble getting this thing to
what?
To transfer to the virtual environment.
This one right here? This should just be as easy as writing in the home directory and then writing the name of the virtual environment at the end. That's all you're doing at this step. So there shouldn't be anything outside of writing the name of the path to that virtual environment that you made.
So we're going to go /home.
Yep, and then / your username again. So that's it's like the breakout of the tilde for the full path to your home, and then the whatever directory or whatever name you chose for your virtual environment is the last part of that directory. All right, so once we've added these parts and pieces, we've done a lot of changes. We're gonna go up here and we're gonna reload. Click this green reload button, and it should reload our source code and our settings and configurations on the server.
I'm missing a step here. It's not, I got a warning, it says no virtual environment. And I need to add E and V at the end, right?
Well, yeah, you have to correctly write the name of the path. Whatever you named your virtual environment, it has to be written exactly the same way here. No spaces, no nothing. It's like it is the path to it. It's how the computer is going to find that environment.
Okay.
So it's just like every other path address that we're doing, separated by slashes, and this should just be your home slash. If you're following the same way we are, it should look just like this, except your username instead of my username should be in there. So it should just be slash home slash username slash VN.
Oh, I'm not, what am I missing? I'm missing the V.
There you go. That'll stop you. All right. So then once we've done this and you hit reload and it refreshes everything on the server side, then this is our web app that we ran before, the Hello World. Remember, we commented out. So I'm going to go back here and refresh my browser, and it should, womp womp, it should break because there's something I actually set up earlier. I don't know if you remember. I said it was going to break. Now, this just show you what happens when it breaks here. And we have our debugging to set to true, so it's showing us a little bit more detail than if we had set to false. Normally, if it was set to false, it would just say like 505 or 500 or whatever the error was that said it broke. But I did this to show you that it shows like links to logs. Again, there's like several links here. The top one that it has, this error log, this is the one you really want to use. It's the best one. Just to refresh your memory, in case you have, you're in production or something like that, and you don't have debug set to true like we do now, and you don't get that detailed error message on your web tab, if you scroll down to log files, the second log there, the error log, is the one we want. So that's the best one. So I'm going to open that up now. I'm going to show you what error we got. I'm going to have a look at that. So I'm going to open this up in a new tab. And these are not like real time. So if we go and break something else right now, it's not going to keep giving me things. But you see, this is also very old. Like the dates over here are from the last time we ran the course. So this is a very long error log. Yours probably won't be this long if you're following along. But I'm going to scroll down to the most recent, the end of it, to try to debug this situation. So here we can see, judging by the timestamp over here on the side, this is just about where we need to be. All right, so here we go. July 1st. Couldn't find this. No big deal. Error running WSGI application. That's a problem. Module not found error. No module named environ. All right, so anybody who hasn't done the course already or didn't follow along with the stuff in the documentation, or maybe if you did, what is this error telling us and how do we fix it?
Somehow
Scott,
you're
you want to take a crack at that? You think you know what's
Is
wrong
it
here?
rather than environ, shouldn't it be ENV?
No. You're close. Here, let's scroll down a little further. So this is called a trace back, right? So all this error is showing us, it shows the specific file. It says filed, and there's a whole path to a file, and it says line. It says what line was in that file, right? And you remember, if we go back to our WSGI file, this is the last line in that file. It says application equals this thing, right? So this is just showing us all the files that it went through and read. So usually when you scroll down to the bottom, this is kind of the first thing that it read to get there. And this is generally your code in this point, right? So this, as you can see, this is that line that I wrote in. Remember, I wrote from environ import capital ENV. So does that help you? Is there anything wrong with that statement, or does this tip you off to what it could be? Between the two things I've highlighted, this statement here and the no module found error.
Should it have been environment instead of environment?
Nope.
The
Nope.
word,
No, good call, but that's
Okay.
not quite it. No,
Show me that on the bottom again, the second one on the bottom.
sure.
That's what I see here in your commands as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So that's the thing. There's nothing wrong with this. This is well written. This is well formed. There's no problems here. So it's not a syntax error. This is telling us right here that this module with this name that we reference here, because we say from environment, right? So that's where we reference it, and then it went to look for it, doesn't exist in our environment, right? So in our virtual environment that we created, we didn't import this package, so it doesn't exist there. So to solve this problem, we need to go back to our console. and I need to spell the word clear properly, and we'll clear up our screen. And what we're going to do is we're going to install that package the way we should have from the beginning. I left it out when we installed Django. We could have done Django and Environ at the same time. And that's what it says in the documentation. But I left it out to show you that error. So what we're going to do is we're going to install. So we're going to install a new package. As you can see, we're still in the same virtual environment that we were before. And well, actually, before we do that, let's show you. We'll do pip list again real quick and just show you that there is no environment package here. So you see there's ASCII ref, Django, pip, setup tools, SQL parts, typing extensions. There's nothing called environment. Doesn't exist. So we need to install it. So we're going to do pip install and then the name of the package we want. In this case, it is a special Django adapted version of Environ. So the way we do it is Django-Environ is the name of the package. So pip install Django-Environ, all lowercase, only spaces between pip install and then after install. The other thing is just a hyphenated thing. And this should just take a second to drop in there and install. And then when we do, again, out of regular habit, make sure that anytime you make a change, just come back in here and reload your web application on the server side, again, somewhere on the East Coast in the AWS instance that these guys have. And once that's done, you should, nope, that's my log, sorry. We should go back to our web page, be able to refresh it. Oh, are we still broken?
I think you have to reload it.
Did I not reload it? I thought I did reload it. Let's reload it anyway.
It hasn't finished.
Maybe it didn't
Still
finish
trying.
reloading. Maybe I jumped the gun on the reloading.
There you go.
Because
There you go.
now it should be installed. Let's just make sure because I also want to make sure I prove that it's in there. Okay, so there's our Django environment. So we did install it. So we have it now. So that's different, which is good. So let's see. Now we've reloaded our web app. Let's just start it up again afresh from here. And still something went wrong. What error are we running into now? Import lib.
Where are you getting to this page?
So this is when it popped up as broken, and I opened up my actual web tab, right? Open up the web app.
Okay.
It's in the error logs right here. So it's also down on the web tab itself. You can get to the error logs by scrolling down to log files and open it up that way. But I'm breaking things in new and exciting ways.
You know, I'm looking at this and I'm not seeing anything. I'm seeing all this stuff from the first time I took the course. This is about where I broke down.
Yeah, if you scroll all the way down, so like if you see the timestamp on the side, it'll show you.
You see the timestamp there? I'm seeing May 3rd.
Are you getting the error? Are you still getting an error, or does yours work?
No, mine says I'm on the something went wrong page.
And is something did go wrong for you as well, following these same directions?
Apparently so. I don't know, I'm a little vague about what we're doing. That makes it difficult to provide a precise and accurate answer to your question.
Yeah, well, me absolutely breaking this in the demo is not helpful at all either, right? So, that doesn't make things helpful either. But this is saying that we have an improper configured error. But that doesn't tell me where. Make sure I actually saved my .env file the way I expected to, and it referenced things the way I expected it to. So we're doing, and I'm looking inside my .env, make sure I spelled everything correctly there, and that should work.
Now I got July. Okay.
Okay. And you're still getting the same error? You're still getting everyone else? Is everyone that's following on breaking in the same way that I am? Is this all?
So, yeah. That's all this page shows is the errors, right?
Interesting. Yeah, we should be having a rocket flying at this point.
Or maybe it's one of those you see that it gets 2 feet off the ground and falls over and blows up on the pad.
So we do it. Okay. All right. So let's make sure that we have all this properly spelled. And I believe we do. My site.env So VM source code, refresh the browser. Yeah. That is interesting. And our error log just shows that there is improper. Now, this is interesting. Exec. Okay, so typically what I would do in this scenario to debug this, and this is something that I could encourage everyone to do. We could just do a quick speed run and try to run it all the way back to this point and get it set back up completely from scratch, since we haven't even gone that far in it. Right. So that's what I might do in this scenario if I'm like, wait, why didn't this work the way it was supposed to? Instead of trying to go back and piece everything together, what I would do, if you guys are on board, we could just do this together, is I would just go back and throw this entire thing out and start over from scratch and just drop the whole thing. And see if we can just speed run this bad boy back all the way up to where it's supposed to be and see if I could catch whatever error I made along the way. How about we do that? All right.
Okay, let's do it.
Let's do this. Let's jump in. So yeah, let's delete it. We like that. Now I have no more apps. I'm also going to go back to, you can go away, you can go away. This isn't going to exist anymore. Go back to my consoles. And I'm going to get rid of all this stuff. So I'm going to do rm-rf. I'm going to say my site. Should get rid of all of that. Oh, sorry. Let me go home first and do that again. rm-rf. My site, and that should remove everything from there.
Okay, let's go back to this step. We're on the web page, is that right?
Yep.
You had a red button that I don't see.
Yeah, if you go all the way down to web
Go way down
tab.
to the bottom, right?
Yep.
Delete it, the whole thing.
Yep. All right. So now I did rm-rf to remove my virtual environment. This is going to take a minute. This takes a while to get rid of that. So I'm going to let that run. And I'm going to go back over here and go back through the steps of setting up the new app again, just real quick. So it's going to tell me the domain name, try to pitch me an upgrade, manual config, Python 3.10. Yes, we're aware of this. We will try not to break things this time. All right. So now we're going to go into, this is still doing its thing. We'll open this up because we're definitely making some changes in our WSGI file. And we can go ahead and, oh man, you just take a few minutes, don't you? All right, so we can go ahead and comment this stuff out, even though we're gonna have nothing to do when Django loads again. Comment that out. And then uncomment our Django stuff. Chunk. Save this. So bash console. All right, cool. We're back into control. Whoops. LS. Cool. All right. Now we are going to make our virtual environment again, Python 3-m VM. And we'll call it VM for demonstrative purposes.
Do I want to be in the my site subdirectory when I'm doing this?
I threw that out. If you're following along with trashing it and starting all the way over, I got you all the way to your home directory and just remove that my site directory completely.
Okay, so we're going to go. I would go rm
-rf. Remember to do that because it's recursive and it forces things to be removed.
How do you do that? I'm trying to remove the my site directory.
Okay, yeah, do rm-rf and then my site.
-rf dash my site.
No, I'm
You
sorry.
know when it's done.
No dash. When it's done removing,
Yeah.
If you have control back in your console, so like I don't have this back yet. So now I just finished creating this virtual environment. You can tell because I have control back, the $, and then my cursor is back there. And it's the same thing if you're removing something or adding something. So now I have this VM. So I'm gonna do source VM bin activate to get into that environment. And then we're going to do pip install Django and Django environment.
I'm still trying to, I got RM-RF.
And then no dash, just the name that you want to get rid of. So if it's my
Okay.
site, just space my site. All right. So Django and Django environment. This might take a few minutes to do that.
No, my site is still popping up.
Uh-oh. Make sure you're in your home directory and you're not in.
I'm not my home directory. I'm in my site.
Well, that's why.
server.
Yeah, that's why. Get out of that my site. You're not going to delete the directory you're in. You have to get out of your directory. Go back to your home directory and then do that rm.rf.
So how do you go from my site back to the home directory?
Just type in cd with
CD?
no arguments from wherever you are, and it'll take you right back to your home directory.
Okay, there we go. Got
Yep.
it. Thank you.
Sure. So I'm hoping that what happened before, maybe when I opened the manage.py file, I erased something or broke something to show as a demonstration. But I'm hoping by resetting things like this completely from scratch and jumping back through those steps real quickly, that we'll be able to dislodge whatever it was that we missed in the first time, because that was not a planned miss. Like you saw this time, I installed both Django and Django environment right off the bat because I know I need both. You could do that too. If you know packages you need right off the bat, you could set both the names. And this is gonna take a few minutes to install all the way. So if you're following along, you're doing it straight from scratch again. This is gonna hang out for a few minutes. And last time we went back over to our WSGI file and made sure that we uncommented all the parts that we needed here. As a quick note, while that's loading again, Flask is another Python-based web framework that's arguably a lot easier to learn than Django. So, it's useful. It's something that's out there, and you could build it in here too if you ever see an opportunity to learn Flask.
So yeah, let me see that screen for just a minute.
Sure, this one.
I got it. I think it's environment, Django-environment, right?
Django-environ, and it stops it.
Environment.
Yep. For the name of.
It's doing some stuff.
This package right here, right? Yeah, Django-environment. This can potentially take minutes,
Yeah, I see pip wheels and I see successfully installed Django environment 0.11.2.
Perfect.
Okay.
I think that's the most recent version of it.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see. All right, it's taking a sweet time downloading all that stuff. We can update our other directories if we wanted to. 42, my site doesn't exist. I know, because it's getting there. We'll make it in a second. Yeah.
It's the files screen you're looking at right now?
Yep. I'm just going through and putting the directories in that we're going to be using. Even though this one doesn't exist yet, we haven't made it. It's giving us a warning that says, hey, this doesn't exist. All right. Now that we have our control back, let's do this thing. All right. So we're going to do Python 3-m Django start project my site double ampersand. This is what I was talking about before. If you do ampersand, this is a way to get two commands in a row. So it's going to execute the first command before the ampersands and then the second one. So there is no my site directory yet, but there will be once we create the project. So this is going to both create the project and put me in that directory. So I'm just going to do those commands all at the same time. We see we're in the same directory as our manage.py, which I'm not going to open this time. For some reason, I have a paranoid feeling that that's what I did to it last time. All right, now we'll go back and do the quick changes that we need to our settings.
You got one thing showing here that I don't have. I have the VENV before my
activate your virtual environment. Do source space name of your virtual environment bin activate. All right, so my site settings.py. Okay, here we are, totally from scratch. totally afresh, all new. Go through these same steps before. So from environ, import capital ENV as the class. Then we will instantiate our class as capital ENV parentheses, and then we will read our environment and say our env file keyword variable is the path to our .env file, which we will make shortly. I'm going to add my allowed hosts so that I don't end up copying and pasting over myself like I did before. And we will pull out our secret key and do env. And this should just be a reference to our Django secret key as a string. Key. Save that. I should be able to create our .env file again. Oh, except not shouting. Oh, hold on, not there. Go to my site. My site needs to be alongside our settings. So our settings.py .env.
I'm not seeing I'm clicking my site and I'm not getting settings.
Uh-oh, there should be a my site directory inside the outer my site directory.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I've only got one.
In your files? So like if you go, there's home, username, and then there's just one, and there's no other my site in there?
Let me go back a step, okay?
Sure.
Okay, I'm in files, right?
Yep.
The directories, it says my site / right?
Mm-hmm.
I click that.
Yep. Try scrolling down because these are things that are made automatically. So if you have the top level of my site, there's no, unless Django just hung up on you and it didn't work for some reason, it's going to automatically make that subdirectory. All right, so now I went through all the steps again, real quickly. Hopefully that worked this time, unless I'm missing something huge that I'm just overlooking and I'm not able to debug it. But we're going to refresh again. We ran through the steps real fast again of starting a project, creating a new virtual environment, adding the packages that we need, both Django and Django Environ. We updated the WSGI file to uncomment out the pure WSGI, I'm sorry, comment out the pure WSGI application, uncomment the Django application, and then adjusted our settings to hide our secret key in an environment variable in a .env file that was stored alongside our settings.py file in that same directory, the lower level my site directory. And now we will see if this thing is entirely possible. I broke it even worse. And it's not going to work in any functional way at all.
Just a quick plug for Jeff on that day 5 the Django setup.
Yeah.
He gives every step.
Yeah.
If you follow through that, we have those steps available to us.
I'm still running into an error. It's the same error. Interesting. All right. So this is pretty upsetting. I'm not sure why I'm getting this error because it's saying an import error is if something is not imported into our environment. It's not saying what. ENV Django secret key is in there. All right, so let's try doing this. See if we can debug this. If we can't, it's going to have to be an unfortunate taking a break, and I'm going to have to come back to it, figure out exactly what I'm doing wrong, and then update y'all on a quick note afterwards. But I'm going to go in here and see if it could just be the reference out to that environment variable for some reason, or that environment file, if that somehow is breaking it. And I'll just put in our settings.py, I'm going to try just putting the secret key straight back in there and skip this whole step and see how that goes. That I don't see any reason to think that that would be it, but it could be. I could be missing something in here. And just put this back in. And if this doesn't work, then I'm going to hang my head in shame and I'm going to have to dig in to figure out what exactly the problem is here. And I'm going to update because this is something that worked several times when I did it earlier today and ran through it to make sure that I could build to this point for the class. And of course, Murphy's Law being what it is, it's failing me now that I'm trying to demonstrate. Oh, there we go. That was. Okay, so it was something in my environment variable. Now we know the problem. All right, great. So we debugged it. We solved it. Now what I did there, if you missed it, was I went back to my settings file and I took the assumption, not assumption, but I was looking at my log file that said that something was broken and it was showing this right here, the secret key, and Django secret key something. And so I thought, all right, well, if that's the case, then let's skip all this. I may have missed a step in here somewhere and broken something in how I did that. So I just put the secret key back in here and it worked. So I did. I led you wrong somewhere on that hiding your secret key in what it is. I'm gonna have to go back and figure out exactly what it is, and I'll follow up with everybody on what I missed in the email. But the point being that if you come in here and you leave the secret key how it is, and you skip these steps of the ENV that we did, which is not a best practice, it should work at this point. This is the point that I want everyone to get to today, is this rocket flying up in the air that says the install worked successfully. Congratulations. This is the point at which we need to be to build further and go from here. So apologies for the dancing around with the environment file not working the way I expected it to, and I will figure out what it is I'm missing and why I ham-handedly did that improperly. But this is the place where we need to be today. Any questions on that?
Yeah, I'm a considerable way away from that.
Okay. So go through those steps. Again, if it gets hung up with that same thing, I'm going to go back through and I'm going to go off the documentation that I sent out, and I'm going to send out the recording from tonight, and I'm going to make sure that the documentation is right with the steps that could get us to this point before I send it back to you to make sure it's right. So whatever mistake I was making here when I was typing it live, maybe we'll see it in the video, but it won't be repeated in the documentation. So it will be able to get you to this point with copying and pasting and checking it out. So rewatch these steps, rewatch what we did today, follow the documentation, and get to this point. So we're going to go from here and build on that tomorrow and continue to hook up our backend stuff, set up a little bit of a homepage that we can look at and have some more stuff to play around with. Right. So not the smoothest demo, but we got there. A little bit rough. And again, I do owe everyone an explanation of exactly how I got hung up in there, or make sure that the documentation is right, because that hiding your secret key, that's a step that we shouldn't skip. It's something that you should get good to make working, right? So I failed to get it working here in class, but I'll make sure that I get it working to follow up with everybody. Do we have any, I know we're a few minutes over, do we have any questions or anything about the stuff that we covered here, either conceptually or concretely?
No, I just have to look at what you're going to send, and I have to go through it and see if I can get it in there.
All right, cool. And yeah, as you try this, I know we're gonna have class again tomorrow, so it's gonna be pretty much immediately we're back into it. Try to get to that point where you get the rocket flying, like we were just looking at.
Yeah.
And if you can't, work through it a little bit, give it a few shots. Reach out to me before class tomorrow if you have time, and we'll see if we can figure out how to get a hold of it. And if not before class tomorrow, then I'm available throughout the week afterwards, and we can sit down and I can help you get unstuck and at least get to those points like we did just now. We may skip a step and not hide things in environment files, but that's the truth for anybody. Reach out if you need.
Yeah, right now I'm dead in the water, right?
Yeah. So take a step back, try again in a little bit, try to run through the documentation. It should be good, the stuff that I sent out earlier. There's something that I was missing when I was writing it live, but I'm going to double check. You should have access to it in the email, but I'll resend it to make sure after I've checked it and after I got this video recorded for you.
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. If nothing else, then we will meet up tomorrow. We will build from here again with the rocket launching. We will have a more, not real interesting, but we'll have our own homepage to add from there. All right.
That's great. Yeah.
All right, y'all.